We're back for the second part of the painting. We've completed a good 3/4 of the painting in terms of large shapes and large statements. The section we're starting now is the right-handed building, which is actually closer to us, and because of that, we're starting with a little bit of a darker gray. We're still trying to achieve a gradation going from a little darker to lighter, and we're also adding an awning. This awning has much more red, so we're adding a bit of color to this gray painting, and we'll be using red in other places as well to continue to make it feel more integrated into the painting, in some of the street signs, into some of the figures, and just putting a few dots of red, it can actually make a difference. So this is being all done sort of while the painting is wet, at least the right side is wet. And I'm joining some of the left side and creating a dark passage underneath the awning so that we feel it's hanging over the cafe, leaving little whites there, which later on will probably be turned into something like a figure sitting at a table. Now we're going to move into a slower part of the painting where we're adding some details to the buildings. This is being done with dry brush. I can still see the pencil marks from my original drawing, so I have some guidance. Well, we're going to be adding dry brush to create windows, the illusion of balconies, ornamentation on the buildings. And this painting is, you're seeing the painting come to fruition, but it was started long before this painting actually started. I started with sketching on location and doing a watercolor on location, coming back to Boston and doing other watercolors to cement the idea that I had. If you compare it with the photograph, you can tell that I took liberties with the tonal values. I took liberties with the scale of the building, the Notre Dame. I'm actually making it a little bigger than it appears when you're standing on the street. All of these things I learned through doing some studies, doing little studies. And these studies really enabled me to be able to perform the watercolor. In other words, I seldom looked at my reference while I'm painting this. I was much more focused on what was happening within the painting, and I had sort of, I guess, visually memorized much of the scene that I wanted to capture. So this was done through 6 or 7 different little studies, sketches, small watercolors, before even doing this painting. So it's a long process to arrive at a point where you feel that you can be more spontaneous, but it's a necessary process. I like to compare that to the musician who, when we go to see them in the music hall or on the stage, they're usually not looking at music, and they're performing the piece from heart, by heart. They've come to memorize the musical piece through hours and hours of practice and a complete and thorough understanding of what was written on the score. And they reach a point finally where they have it memorized, and at this point they can put themselves into the music. You can tell because they start to shape the dynamics in a special way. They start to emphasize parts of the music, and it comes out as a unique piece that way. So visual artists do the same thing. We take our subject and we practice it, and then we paint it essentially from memory. And by doing this, we can put more expression into the brush strokes. We feel more at ease to take liberties with scale, position, lights and darks, and we suit it to our particular taste. So in my opinion, in my I guess my particular stage in painting, I feel that watercolor is very much like a performance at times, where very often things come together, and certainly watercolor as a media contribute to this. In other words, these wet on wet washes, they have their own mind. They sometimes go where we want them, sometimes they end up doing something else. And if I am confident in what I'm doing, I allow that to happen, and I encourage that to happen. So watercolor very much works with this idea of being a performance-based media. At this stage in the painting, you can see I'm working much more on the left side. I'm adding figures with a dark color. This is almost all neutral tint. And I'm adding the reflections of some of the street lights and some of the figures on the left side, carrying them all the way down to the bottom of the painting. These sorts of marks really create the effect that the street is very wet and very shiny and reflecting those things which are directly above it. I'm also adding a few brighter colors into the street signs, carrying that red to different parts of the painting, and very much at this stage I'm kind of unifying left and right and trying to get a feeling of balance. Small brushes at this point, working with some of the darker values, adding highlights here and there, and working towards the end of the painting. I'll be putting in some dashes of color, some headlights for the vehicles and their reflections as well. And with those final strokes, this painting will be finished. And there it is, Notre Dame.